Welcome, everyone. If you're a principal investigator or key personnel here at Western Carolina University, you know how important it is to get the supplies you need for your sponsored project. So today, we're going to break down how to use a procurement card, your P card, with grant funds. We'll go through everything from getting set up to closing out your project, all to help you stay compliant so you can focus on your amazing research.
All right, here's our roadmap. First, we'll hit the essentials of grant P cards, including how you even get one. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of managing your money and, of course, the paperwork. We'll also walk through the really critical timeline for the end of your grant. And maybe most importantly, we'll make sure you know who your support team is because they're here to help you succeed. Okay, first up, the basics. Before you can even think about using a P card, you have to submit a quick application to Accounts Payable. They'll then get the final thumbs up from the Office of Research Administration. You'll also need to acknowledge that you've read the guidelines. Now, this isn't just bureaucratic busywork. These steps are really the foundation for protecting your project from any financial hiccups down the road.
And you know, the university's guidance really says it best. The whole point is to ensure smooth financial management. So try not to think of these rules as restrictions. Instead, see them as a framework, a kind of scaffolding built to support your research. Following them is what keeps everything clean and keeps you in good standing with your sponsors.
This right here gets to the heart of the challenge with P cards. Look, they are incredibly convenient for getting what you need fast. But here's the catch. Unlike a purchase order, there's no upfront approval safety net for every single transaction. And that convenience, it creates an inherent risk. An unallowable cost might not get spotted until an audit, which is exactly why following these spending and documentation rules is your single best line of defense.
All right, let's get down to brass tacks. Section 2 is all about how you manage your money correctly from the get-go. And it really comes down to two key habits: keeping a close eye on your budget and coding every expense accurately. You know, it honestly is this simple. Every grant has very specific budget categories. As long as you stay within those lines, your project just hums along smoothly. But the moment you overspend in one area, you've created an administrative tangle that someone has to fix.
And that administrative tangle? It's called a recode. Think of it as a financial detour you really want to avoid. It means an expense hit the wrong budget line and now it has to be manually moved. Not only does that complicate your reports, but it can also be a major red flag for auditors.
So, to wrap up this section, it all boils down to two simple, non-negotiable rules. First, know your budget and stay in your lane. Second, always pick the most accurate account code for what you're buying. If you can get these two things right, you'll avoid 99% of the potential financial headaches. Okay, now let's talk about the paper trail. I know. Documentation might sound tedious, but clear, consistent paperwork is your absolute best friend when it comes to audits and compliance. Seriously. For every single purchase you make, there's a simple two-step process. First, you've got to attach an itemized receipt, and I mean itemized. A simple credit card slip just won't cut it. Second, you have to add a clear business comment that explains the why behind the purchase. And that business comment, it's the most critical piece of the puzzle. It has to clearly and directly answer this question: how did this purchase help achieve the specific goals of this grant? A vague comment like lab supplies just isn't enough. You have to be specific so you leave zero room for an auditor to ask questions later. We're now moving into what is probably the most time-sensitive phase of your project, the final 90 days. The rules get a lot stricter here, and for a very good reason. We want to ensure a clean, on-time closeout for you.
This timeline really lays it all out. Once you hit that 90-day mark, your spending needs to narrow to only things that are absolutely essential for finishing the project's work. This is not the time to stockpile supplies for later. And then, we hit a hard stop.
If there is one number you remember from this entire explainer, please make it this one: 30. There are absolutely no P card purchases using sponsored funds allowed within the final 30 days of your project. This is a firm, non-negotiable rule to make sure every expense is processed and reconciled before that grant officially ends.
So, this leads to two very simple action items for a smooth closeout. First, make your last P card purchase before that 30-day window kicks in. Second, just be aware that Accounts Payable will automatically start the process of removing the sponsored fund from your P card as that end date gets closer.
Look, we've covered a lot of rules, and I know it can feel like a lot to keep track of while you're also trying to do groundbreaking research. But the most important thing to remember is that you are not expected to do this alone.
So, what do?
You're standing in a store or you're on a website and you're just not 100% sure if a purchase is allowable or how to code it. The answer is so simple. Just ask before you buy. A quick email can literally save you from a massive headache down the line.
And the people you should be asking are right here on the post-award team. Ben Peters and Cameron Lopez, they're your primary resources for navigating all of this. Here's their contact info. Please do not hesitate to reach out to them. No question is too big or too small.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? It's that proactive management is everything. By understanding the rules, documenting everything clearly, and reaching out for help when you need it, you can make sure your project's finances are clean, compliant, and totally audit-proof. And that frees you up to focus on what actually matters, your research. So as a next step, maybe think about one part of your P-card process that you can improve after watching this.